The Letter That Shook the World. Einstein, Szilard, and the Warning. 1. The Summer of Fear, 1939. The wind off Long Island Sound carried the smell of salt and pine through the windows of Albert Einstein's small cottage in Peconic, New York. He had come here to escape the noise of the world, to sail, to think, to rest. Europe was unraveling again. Hitler had swallowed Austria and Czechoslovakia. The newspapers shouted of war that seemed inevitable. But Einstein, 60 years old, weary from fame, wanted only silence. Then came the knock. It was a soft, polite tap on the door, but behind it stood a man with the urgency of the age. Leo Szilard, a Hungarian physicist in exile, had driven through the sweltering August heat to reach the reclusive genius. In his hand, he carried a folder, papers, calculations, letters, and in his eyes, something Einstein hadn't seen since the First World War: fear. Szilard was no stranger to big ideas. In 1933, standing at a London traffic light, he had imagined the concept of a nuclear chain reaction, the idea that one atomic event could set off another, releasing unimaginable energy. It had remained theory, a whisper of what atoms might hide. But by 1938, German scientists had done the unthinkable. They had split the atom of uranium. Now, Szilard was terrified of what his homeland, or rather, what his homeland's conquerors, might do with that knowledge. He told Einstein as much that afternoon. They sat in wicker chairs under the shade of a tree, while cicadas hummed in the still air. Szilard explained that if enough uranium could be purified and concentrated, it could sustain a chain reaction, a self-propagating burst of energy that could flatten entire cities. Einstein listened silently, nodding slowly. Then, in his soft German-accented English, he murmured, "I never thought of that." Those 5 words marked the quiet beginning of the atomic age. 2. A race in the shadows. The discovery of nuclear fission in December 1938 by Otto Hahn and Lise Meitner in Germany had sent a shock through the scientific world. Meitner, an Austrian Jew forced to flee the Nazis, had realized the implication. When uranium's nucleus was split, it released not just energy, but neutrons capable of splitting other atoms, a chain reaction. In the right configuration, it could be a source of vast power or the most devastating weapon in human history. Szilard and fellow Hungarian émigrés, Eugene Wigner and Edward Teller, understood the danger faster than most. They had fled the fascist regimes of Europe and knew exactly what Hitler might do with a superweapon. The Nazis already controlled uranium mines in Czechoslovakia. What if Germany's scientists, Heisenberg, Hahn, and others, were building a bomb? The United States, still nursing the wounds of the Great Depression, had no formal atomic research program. The military barely understood nuclear physics, and Washington bureaucrats dismissed it as academic speculation. Szilard and Wigner decided someone had to make them understand, and there was only one man whose name could open the White House doors: Albert Einstein. Einstein was reluctant. He was a pacifist, a man who had spoken out against war since the trenches of 1914. But Szilard persisted. They needed a letter, a personal appeal to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, explaining the potential of uranium and the danger that Nazi Germany might be building a bomb. Over the next several days, the 2 men, joined by Wigner, drafted and redrafted the text. Szilard wrote most of the technical details. Einstein provided the authority of his name. The language was calm, measured, but chilling. It is conceivable that extremely powerful bombs of a new type may thus be constructed. A single bomb of this type, carried by boat and exploded in a port, might very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territory. They knew it sounded unbelievable. That was precisely the problem. Without Einstein's signature, no one in Washington would take such a claim seriously. On August 2, 1939, Einstein signed the letter in his spidery hand. The world's most famous scientist had just warned the President of the United States about the most terrible weapon ever imagined. But a signed letter meant nothing unless it reached the right hands. Szilard turned to a trusted intermediary, Alexander Sachs, a Wall Street economist and friend of Roosevelt. He agreed to deliver the letter personally. Yet, history, as it often does, moved in strange rhythms. The next day, Germany invaded Poland. Europe was at war again. For weeks, Sachs carried the letter unopened. As the headlines grew darker, France and Britain declared war on Germany. Refugees poured out of the continent. In Washington, Roosevelt was consumed with the crisis abroad. The warning about uranium could wait. Or so it seemed. Finally, on October 11, 1939, more than 2 months after Einstein's signature dried, Sachs secured a meeting with Roosevelt in the Oval Office. He brought not just the letter, but also a memorandum and his own passionate summary of the danger. The president listened quietly, pipe in hand. When Sachs finished, Roosevelt leaned back and said, half joking, "What you're after is to see that the Nazis don't blow us up." Sachs nodded. "Precisely." Roosevelt turned to his aide, Brigadier General Edwin Watson, and said words that would alter the course of the century. "This requires action." That action took shape as the Advisory Committee on Uranium, America's first step toward what would later become the Manhattan Project. Its members included scientists, military officers, and government officials who began to explore uranium research and funding. They met quietly, often in nondescript offices in Washington, D.C. The initial funding Roosevelt approved was laughably small, just $6,000 for research on uranium chain reactions. Yet from that modest seed grew an enterprise that, within 6 years, would employ 130,000 people and cost over $2 billion, equivalent to nearly $30 billion today. Meanwhile, Einstein returned to his quiet life on Long Island. He had done his duty, he thought. He never joined the Manhattan Project. He was not even cleared for it, deemed a security risk because of his pacifist and socialist leanings. But his letter had set the chain reaction in motion, not of neutrons, but of men and machines and decisions that would split the world itself. 6. The irony of genius. Years later, Einstein would call it the greatest mistake of his life. He said, "Had I known that the Germans would not succeed in producing an atomic bomb, I would have never lifted a finger." He had unleashed a process that no single mind could control, a process that would lead to Los Alamos, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and a Cold War balanced on the edge of annihilation. Yet in that summer of 1939, as war clouds gathered over Europe, no one could know where it would end. The world's greatest scientist had written a warning, and with that stroke of a pen, the race to control the atom had begun.